Someone told me that if I was married with children, I would never say my story. Others tell me that my story is the reason I'm not married with children. But I guess Bibi proves that theory wrong. Secrets are bad for your health. Secrets are toxic. Secrets kill. Imagine keeping a secret, even a simple secret. You borrowed your friend's car. You dinged it. Even that secret, imagine keeping that for a long time. Imagine keeping a secret for a year. Anyone here has kept a secret for a year? 10 years? Anyone here kept a secret for 10 years? About 15 years. Anybody's kept a secret for 15 years? I did. My secret? I was sexually abused from the ages of 8 to 10 by an adolescent male. There. I said it. 20 years too late. Some may be confused if something is secret or something is private. So I think it's important that I make the distinction. They're actually the opposite. Keeping something secret and keeping something private are exactly the opposite. Something private means that you share it. It's a particular thing that you share only with particular people. Something which is secret is a particular thing which you hide from particular people. Sometimes particular people is everybody, and sometimes particular people is yourself. So why did I keep my secret? 2.5 years ago, when I told my mother that I was sexually abused, she asked me the same question. Why didn't I tell her? That's right. If you would have asked my mother 3 years ago if any of her 9 children were sexually abused, the answer would have been no. So why do people keep secrets? I think some of you probably heard tonight that sometimes the very best thing we can do is actually keep a secret. After hearing some of the way people were treated when they said their story, I think the smartest thing I did was keep a secret. But they're still toxic. Asking someone who is sexually abused why they keep it a secret is like asking someone who was cut why they're bleeding. It's one of the side effects. I get 2 calls from numbers that I don't know. Some are soliciting donations, and some are to share their story or their family's story about child sexual abuse. I always know at the beginning of the conversation what it is. Fundraisers are a little bolder. A victim of sexual abuse almost always starts the same way. And it's not only when they're talking to me, even when they walk in JCW's doors. They say, I'm sorry for bothering you. I don't mean to inconvenience you. I say, have you seen the door? Have you seen the sign, Jewish Community Watch? This is what we're here for you. Sorry to inconvenience you, they always say. And I'm not really here for me. I just think this person might be bad for others, as if their story, their life, isn't worth it. Even if abuser never goes on to molest anyone else, it's enough of a reason to hold them accountable. Their life is worth it. Every single victim. So what were the reasons I gave myself for not sharing my story, for keeping it a secret? The first, someone's paying attention. The first is that I considered it my fault. That's right. I thought it was my fault. I called myself weak for losing a wrestling match to a boy twice my size. I called myself disgusting and repulsive for being sexually abused, for entering into a sexual situation out of my choosing. I called myself foolish, naive, too trusting, for allowing myself to be manipulated by a boy that my parents trusted too. I called myself all of these things. How did all that change? I remember the day like it was yesterday. It was November 2013. I went to visit my sister Sarah in Israel. My sister Sarah has 4 children, the oldest of which is Isaac. This is Isaac. You can hear now? There we go. The oldest of which is Isaac. I can hear myself too now. Perfect. Isaac is my oldest nephew. He's really the first child I've seen grow up who got to the age I was when the sexual abuse happened. One afternoon, I'm sitting in my sister's apartment and I'm watching Isaac. He's lying on the floor and he's building a Lego set. My sister was nice enough to send a picture of the exact Lego set he was building that day. And I watched him tinker with this Lego set. Had a lot of intricate details, a lot of particular parts. I'm sitting there on the couch. Suddenly his father walks in. Isaac jumps up and he says, Abba, look what I made. As his father is watching, he's looking at his son's accomplishment. You know what I was thinking? Do you know what was going through my mind? I asked myself, would I call him weak if he lost a wrestling match to a boy twice his size? Would I call him disgusting and repulsive for being sexually abused by an older male? The answer is, I wouldn't. How could I? Look at him. He was just a boy. He is just a boy. I was just a boy. The other reason I didn't talk about my sexual abuse is because of this often repeated, very dangerous myth. Victims become predators. It's said so many times, so many of us believe it. If it were true, how come most predators are male and most victims are female? If even some significant percentage of abuse victims became predators, we wouldn't be talking about 1 in 4, 1 in 5. We'd be talking about 2 in 3, maybe 3 in 3 people who were abused. Because statistics tell us that the average abuser has between 150 and 200 victims. Imagine a serial murder with 150 to 200 victims. How about predators themselves? Are they victims? So maybe there's a small percentage. And the data says no. Most predators are not victims of sexual abuse. Victims of sexual abuse go on to do horrible, horrible things. You've heard suicide, a lot of self-destructive behaviors, a lot of other kind of things. But abusing another child is not one of the things we'll do. We know the pain, and we don't want anyone to ever go through that. The studies will tell you that if you hear that someone sexually abused a child, you can say he probably was never sexually abused. The majority were not sexually abused. Eventually, I told my story. I told my story when I was 23 years old. I walked into Dr. Goldwasser's office for issues completely unrelated to sexual abuse. Although I kept my secret, I actually told the first person who asked. Within 15 minutes of meeting me, he said, "Were you sexually abused?" I thought he had a special skill, but apparently Rabbi Tauber has that too. I told him of my childhood. I told him how shortly before I was born, my parents went by the Rebbe and asked for a bracha. They said they had found a home. The home was large enough to house their growing family. It was affordable. One thing, though, there were no Jews on the block. The Rebbe gave his blessing, and shortly thereafter I was born. My parents became the very first family on the block who was Jewish and white. Growing up, my parents always told me, don't go outside alone. It's not safe. Go with one of the older boys. Don't go to Kingston Avenue and buy something yourself. Go with one of the older boys. If you need to go to the bus stop, don't wait yourself. Don't walk yourself. It's not safe. Go with one of the older boys. One of these older boys took a particular interest in me. Nicest guy in the world. So nice, my mother once turned to me, and this was after the abuse. I believe it was after the abuse had stopped, but it was definitely after it took place. And my mother said, "He's such a good kid. Why can't you be more like him?" And that was painful. That hurt like hell for many years. But I hear so many stories where victims come forward and their parents shame them. Their parents threaten them. The most important thing for an abuser, for a victim of sexual abuse, is for their family to trust them, for their family to support them. And my family has been believable. One day I was playing in the backyard of this safe, older boy. He called to me from his bedroom window. And he said, "Ellie, do you think you'd be able to climb into the window?" Now this was in Brooklyn, where it's not safe, so there are bars in all the windows. I said to him, "How would I get in?" "There are bars on the window." He said, "Up here towards the top, there's a bar which is missing. You'll be able to fit in." So I climbed the window. The top of the bars was probably about 10 or 12 feet. I made it towards the top. Just like he said, there was a space large enough for a small boy to fit through. That's a picture of me at about the age the abuse started. It took a lot of days of telling myself I'm very weak, going to the gym to get this size. I didn't get it naturally. So I climbed into his window. He began wrestling with me. As you've heard, he won the wrestling match. He pinned me to the bed, removed his pants, and used my 8-year-old body for his sexual gratification. I lie there under him, pinned beneath him. I couldn't move. I can hardly breathe. Thank God for orgasm, though. It eventually ended. He went to the bathroom. I was free to go. And a few days later, I went back for more. And many times, over the next 2 or 3 years, I went through the same experience. I never addressed this question in my speech, but I think I should. Why did I go back? I don't have a perfect answer, but I think it's because I didn't want to lose a friend. He was a really good friend. I trusted him, and it was just a price worth paying. Now imagine a life with a bunch of relationships with that template. It's just the price you got to pay to be someone's friend. When I remember I'm in Dr. Goldwasser's office, where it's safe, actually safe. I told him my story, and he said it would be a long, tough road ahead. It's not easy to heal from sexual abuse. I told him I'm ready. There were several things to do, but I'll deal with the one that's important for here. He mentioned EMDR. We did a lot of that, but he recommended I confront the person who abused me. He explained to me that there was a power lost. There was a power, an innate power that he took away from me, but there's a way to get it back. So I called him up. At the time I was living in Bay Harbor Islands, and I remember pacing between my bathroom and my bedroom, saying, I got to call this guy. I got to call this guy. I got to call this guy. I dialed his number. When he picked up the phone, I said, "Hi." I hadn't spoken to him in years. "It's Ellie Nash. I'm sure you know why I'm calling." "Hey, what's going on? How's everything?" I said, "I'm having a lot of memories come back to me. Painful memories. I need you to make it right." He said he would. On that very first phone call, he said he would. He said to me, "What do you need? Tell me what you need and I'll do it." I said, "I want you to hear what you did for me. What you did to me, both from me and a therapist. I want you to know how much you affected my life. I also want to know that you didn't do this to anyone else." I don't recall, but it's possible I apologized for inconveniencing him at the beginning of the conversation. My bet is that I did. And he said he would do all those things. He also said, I want you to pay for one session of therapy, just one. And he agreed to do that as well. The next day he spoke to Dr. Goldwasser on the phone, and arrangements were made for him to come down to Miami. I can't tell you how good I felt. I said, I'm finally going to get over this abuse. I'm finally going to meet with him. I'm finally going to be able to tell him what he did to me, and I can move forward. Thank you. After that conversation with Dr. Goldwasser, he had a conversation with another professional, a lawyer. The lawyer advised against it. Even though there's a statute of limitations in New York that precluded me from doing anything, the lawyer still advised against it. So he went underground. There wasn't a lot I could do. I called my father. I told him, I said, can you get me his address? I want to go to his house. I flew up to New York. My father was afraid what I might do to him. He refused to give me the address. Someone introduced me to a detective. I won't say her name because she can probably lose her job, but she gave me the address and I went to his house. I promised her I wouldn't do anything. It was a freezing New York evening. I came to his house, knocked on the door, no one was there. I looked around, there were no lights in the home, so I figured I would wait. I sat on his doorstep, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, freezing cold. I was shaking, but I wasn't sure if it was because I was nervous or because I was cold. Eventually, I saw an SUV pull up, and I recognized him. He was there with his wife in the passenger seat and several children in the back seat. I knocked on his window, still nervous, but I was going to do this. He rolled down. I told him who I was. Not sure if he recognized me. I told him who I was. I saw his wife sitting there, and I said, I can't say it. I said, you owe me money. I was used to saying it. I said, you owe me money. He actually did. He owed me for one session of therapy. He said, he refused to talk to me. He just looked down. I asked him for some tissues that were in the middle of the car. He gave those to me. I said, in the real world, when people have a dispute, they go in front of someone. If you don't think you owe me money, let's sit in front of a rabbi or someone else, and he can settle it for us. He said, I have nothing to tell you. I walked home that night, broken. What were my choices? I started making phone calls. Whenever I went to Dr. Goldwasser, he would ask me what's going on. Sometimes I told him it was too hard. I didn't want to keep losing. He said the fight is winning. Every time you fight, every time you pick up the phone, every time you go after him, it's winning. So I kept pushing forward. I called some of his family members. This was one of the more interesting communications I had. I called one of his family members, and I said to him, listen, your brother's not giving me a lot of choices. I've tried everything. He promised he's going to do certain things. Forget what he did to me as a child. Let's put that aside. He was a child too. Let's say I can forgive that. But when I spoke to him as an adult, he told me he's going to do certain things, and he didn't do those. Speak to him to make it right, or I'll have to keep pushing forward. In New York, they always called me by my last name. In school, they'd say, Nash, go home. And I told him, in our community, people only know last names. When they hear someone sexually abused, it's a last name. So I said, I know it's going to affect you. He was a friend of mine growing up. This one was one of the brothers my age. I said, I know it's going to affect you. Please do something. I immediately got a call from one of my own family members. And he said, why are you threatening him? And I said, are you kidding? Why am I threatening him? Whose side are you on? I hung up the phone, broken. I kept pushing forward. One person after another, until as hard as it is to admit, I gave up. I did. I said, I'll just walk away. It's fine. I heard he lost 25, 30 pounds in stress. I said, I'll just let it go. I'm over it. I hear that a lot from victims of sexual abuse. I'm over it. I said, I'm over it. I'm fine. It's no problem. After I told my mother, she was obviously extremely upset, extremely disappointed, felt very bad. about what she did. One day she calls me and she says, Ellie, I saw him today. He was by his parents' house and I saw him. You got to let me do something. I said, listen, it's your story too. If you want to do it, do what you got to do. She called Jewish Community Watch. I contrast this with other stories I've heard where parents or family members have threatened their children never to tell Jewish Community Watch. My mother called Jewish Community Watch. The next time I was in Crown Heights, I had a meeting with Mayor. I sat with Mayor. I sat with my mom. And as Mayor said, my mom did the talking. But there was something about Mayor. He was a little different than every other person I spoke to before about sexual abuse. For anyone who ever criticizes Mayor, my hunch is you're not a victim and you're not an abuser, because only those people understand him. Abusers feel scared of him. They're afraid. Victims feel empowered by him over and over and over again. He injects a high that doesn't have a downer afterwards. It just stays. It's unbelievable. And he made me feel comfortable to give him the name of my abuser. I asked him for one more shot. I said, I really want to do this myself. Let me call him before you do. So I called him up. He didn't answer the phone. I called his home number, thinking maybe I'll speak to one of his family members. I was torn. I really was torn. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if his name would ever be plastered on the wall of shame and how I would feel if that happened. But I knew I had to do something. So I called a friend who had a different area code, and I said, please call him. Here's his number. Tell him that Ellie's going to call him and pick up the phone this time. She did. Thank you. She called him, and she said, Ellie's going to call. Please pick up the phone. He said, okay. She said, you will? He said, yes. You promise? Yes. I called. He didn't answer. Perfect. So then Mayor texted him. Well, Mayor called him. No answer. Mayor texted him, hi. This is Mayor Seawald from Jewish Community Watch. Call me. 3 days later, he was in Dr. Goldwasser's office. This guy's a magician. Mayor Seawald. When I finally sat face to face with my abuser, the whole day before was tough. I woke up in the morning and I said, I'm not going to go to work today. For those who know me, they know I don't make that decision often. I said, I'm not going to go to work today. I'm going to sit here and prepare for this. I read everything I could on these confrontations. I was following Dr. Goldwasser's advice on it. I was doing it because he said, and the advice he had given me until then was pretty good. So I said, why not listen to this too? But I didn't quite know what was supposed to happen when I sat face to face with the person who robbed 15 years of my life. When I sat across from him, my first question for him was, why me? Why'd you pick me? And I told him telling me I was cute isn't a good answer. Why me? He said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, you flew all the way down here to tell me you have no idea what I'm talking about? He said, Ellie, honestly, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, when I called you 4.5 years ago, you knew exactly what I was talking about. He said, I vaguely remember some wrestling matches. I said, do you remember who won? Because I do. Do you remember your erection? Because I do. Do you remember your orgasm? Because I do. He still didn't believe me. To this day, I'm not sure if he blocked out the memory himself or he was just seeing if he can push me further. I said, I'll tell you what. I'm going to tell you all the memories I have from when I was a little kid. All the memories I have of you. If I'm wrong on one, I'll walk out of here and say I made up the story. I said, did you win a trophy for your basketball skills? He said, yes. I said, do you have a computer game with airplanes on it? He said, yes. I said, I described his bedroom, and I described the multiple layouts of the bedroom, and in which he abused me multiple times. And the way they changed, and the color of the sheets. And as I said those memories, he began to cry, he began to shake, and he began to speak very incoherently. He was shaking so much, crying so much, eventually I had to step out. I walked out of the room, and Dr. Goldwasser tended to him. On my dime. When I walked back in, he had calmed down to some degree. Dr. Goldwasser also is a magician. Why are you leaving? It's the best part. When I walked back in, he asked me, Eli, what could I do? What could I do to make it right? Do you know what that feels like? Any idea what that feels like to have the person who destroyed so much of your life to ask you, what could I do? That power shifted. And I said, nothing. But I felt whole, finally. He actually gave me the $500 check. It took me a while, but I cashed it. So. I guess the question is, how can we give that experience to every single victim? How could we return that power to every single victim? So many question the wall of shame. So many question Jewish Community Watch. My question is this: what if he didn't do those things? What if he never came down? What if when JCW investigated, there wasn't only me and one other boy which he touched? What if there were hundreds? Should we still worry about his family? Should we still worry whether his sisters will get shidduchim, whether he'll ever be able to hold a job? Should that be our concern? Honestly, because that's all I hear over and over and over again. JCW has exposed 15 people in 4 years. 15 people in 4 years. All the victims who came forward today, myself, Bibi, Yoni, all of our abusers are not on the wall of shame. Those 15 did something that special to deserve it. And they do, every single one of them. There were over 600 complaints that came into JCW. I sat at my sister's l'chaim 2 weeks ago. You know how many people walked over to me at the l'chaim? 7. 7 people at the l'chaim. That's all I did, is hear one person after another who were sexually abused or their child was sexually abused. I don't know if the word epidemic, I don't know if the word plague, I don't know if any of this does justice. It's mass murder. It's ISIS style. Why do I speak? It's not just to share my secret. This is so much more than sharing my secret. I'm standing on top of a rooftop, begging for the microphone, screaming as loud as I could, and asking to come back tomorrow and do it all over again. Why do I do it? What compels me, or what compelled me to spend the last 6 months? My company name is Jeg & Sons, J-E-G. One of my employees joked that the J is for JCW, because that's where my focus has been for the last 6 months. What compels me to do that? I'll tell you what. It's because secrets are bad for us. Secrets are toxic. Secrets kill. Not my secret, our community's secret, because that's really what this is about. This isn't about victims' families and abusers' families. It's about some who want to keep the family secret. And they keep saying, keep the family secret. And I'll keep screaming, no. And I hope everyone else here will also keep screaming, no, we won't keep our family secret. We won't. The Jewish community is a family. It's an extended family, a very large family. And families, this sometimes happens, where some family members want to keep the family secret. They call it airing the dirty laundry. Don't air the dirty laundry. I sat with the administrator of one of the largest Jewish boys' schools in New York 2 weeks ago. And I told him, I don't need you to support JCW, but I'd like you to take the time to investigate JCW. The administrator of this Jewish boys' school had the teacher whose name Bibi mentioned earlier. Her uncle was molested in that school by that teacher. And this individual is exposed on the wall of shame. And he said, did JCW get rabbinical support for exposing him on the wall of shame? And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, if you investigate, you'll see Rabbi Tauber in the audience. Rabbi Tauber flew in from California to speak today. He's a great speaker. But why do you have to fly in from California to speak? Anyone ask that question? Aren't there a lot of Rabbanim in Miami? This is continuing. This is not about 10 years ago. This is not about 15 years ago. Call your rabbi, please. You want to take away from this event? Call your rabbi, your most respected rabbi, and ask them why JCW had to fly someone down to speak. Ask them that. This administrator of the boys' school, I said to him, shame on you for taking mayor's inventory. Shame on you for taking JCW's inventory. Have you ever asked a Rav if you're responsible for all the abuse that happened in your school? And he said, you know how I handled that situation? You know what I did? A lot of people saw the Royal Commission recently. On the Royal Commission, people were shocked. People are calling me, did you see what they're doing? I said, what do you think I see every single day? Every story is the same. If a Royal Commission investigated any school, any organization that I've heard about, their findings would be 100% exactly the same. This headmaster told me, he says, you know what we did when we found out that this teacher sexually abused children? And I want to be clear, JCW knows of 23 victims. JCW knows the names of 23 victims of this teacher. And this is after he was, I believe, in Florida, and there were 2 victims who came forward. So they said, we got to get him out of our community. And they shipped him to Crown Heights because the kids there don't matter. He said, we told him that at the end of the school year he has to leave. I swear, that's what he said. I said to him, if you found out he didn't keep Shabbos, if he didn't keep the Sabbath, would you keep him around? If you found out he didn't keep kosher, would you keep him around? The answer is no. You know why? Because as soon as he does that, he's not part of the family. The message is always the same. It's couched in wonderful terms. Don't speak Lashon Hara. What does it mean? Keep the family secret. It's Masira. What does it mean? Keep the family secret. Last week, there was a major Jewish website which had a picture of an individual. This man's a scammer. Be very careful. I said, wow, what a change. And I look at the comments on the website. All of them are very positive. Yes, protect your children, protect your children. At last JCW event, I said the name of someone who stole money from me. The reason I said his name is because I believe him to be a financial predator. When I pull up his name online, I find 92 judgments, liens, and foreclosures against this man. And people criticized me for it. They said, what right do you have to do that? What right do you have to destroy this person's family, embarrass him? And right before Yom Kippur, And I said, I'll take the criticism. I have no problem. I want to know if one person called him, just one person called him and said, what right do you have to steal from so many people? I want to know that. Or it's only the people who stand up. Only the people who share the family secret who are told it's Lashon Hara, it's Mesira, and suddenly we're worried about right and wrong. This is not about right and wrong. That was wrong. This is not about right or wrong, and this isn't only about sexual abuse. There are many secrets we keep. Families who have a child with a mental disorder can't share that secret. Women who are battered in their home can't share that secret. Women who are trapped in marriages because their husband won't give them a divorce can't share that secret. It's always the same. So here's my message. It's not about our appearance anymore. It's about our essence. It's not about our status. It's about our integrity. And one more thing, and this is private. It's private to each and every one of you. I'm speaking one-on-one to each and every one of you in the audience when I say this. We deserve better.